Hi friends, I'm Gio, and welcome to my channel. I appreciate you stopping by. This story is called Lucky Me. Let's get started. A puff of dust in the distance. It better be a vehicle. I held my thumb out, praying that this time somebody would stop. The last 5 had not. It's Saturday, early afternoon. Why did I think this was a good idea? Because it was my dad's last request. The southern Nevada heat is brutal in August, and it had been blazing down on me for 2 hours. I'm also beyond cell tower range. Lucky me, I'd broken down in a dead zone. I'm sunburned, I'm sweaty, and I bet with one whiff of me nobody would bother stopping. Why was I out in this part of the world? It felt like I was as distant as Africa. Lucky me. I stood next to my black and silver Harley-Davidson, a 1985 FXRC low-glide custom, a classic. I'd inherited it from my dad when he died, just a few months ago. I know this Harley inside and out. I've rebuilt its engine 3 times with my dad. Upgraded the old broken seats with brand new leather and shined that baby until it glowed. There was definite movement in the distance. It got closer. Something was coming this way, and it played country music. I shielded my eyes from the sun and squinted to see better. Most definitely a truck. It must have seen me, I hope. Please stop. Please have some water. Please don't be a psycho. Air conditioning would be nice, but I'm not greedy. The truck, a 1980 rusty green Ford 150, slowed and finally stopped about 100 feet past me. I ran up. The man in the driver's seat was about 70 with skin like old leather, a long-sleeved flannel shirt, and stark white hair partially covered by an old Dodgers baseball cap. The cab smelled like peppermint and old grease. A worn toolbox sat on the passenger seat. The truck didn't have 2 separate seats, but one long bench. This was a very old truck. No air conditioning either. The man tossed me a warm water bottle and muttered, "It's too hot to have a problem today." I took a quick swig before answering. Ran over something, and I did something to my back tire. The tire is flat and doesn't turn. He slightly chuckled. "That's a fine way to meet the neighbors. Come on, my grandson, Charlie, uses my truck to haul his 4-wheelers. Got the ramp in the back. Name's Ernst Williams." "Brody Ashcombe," I said. In a few minutes, we had my bike loaded in the back of the truck and secured it with some rope. As we climbed in, Ernst turned to me and said, "This isn't a free ride. Charlie needs some help with something, and I'm getting too old. Don't you worry, my daughter, Camille, will fix us some dinner, and tomorrow I'll have my grandson and his son Max take you and your bike to Dead Man's Butte. They've got a motorcycle shop there, and cell phones work." "You, Camille, Charlie, and his son Max? 4 generations? How old are you? How many people live out here?" Ernst chuckled. "Max is 8, Charlie is 26, Camille is 45, and I'm old enough to know better. There's 4 of us living at the Desert Bells homestead." I smiled and said, "Desert Bells? You must be a city boy and don't get out into the desert much, do you? A desert bell is a flower here in the Mojave. Camille has planted a ton of them around the house." "How far out are we?" I asked. He started the old truck, shifted it into gear, and we lumbered off before he said, "Ever heard of Morgan's River?" I took a sip of warm water and said, "I've never seen it on any map." Ernst lined the truck up on a road that was little more than pressed dirt and said, "People say the same thing about Dead Man's Butte, but the railroad saved its life. Morgan's River didn't have that luck." "It's a town?" I asked. The old man adjusted his baseball cap to block the sun and said, "Gregory Morgan founded the town back in 1863, at the beginning of the Nevada Silver Rush, and he owned the bank and was sure he'd make a fortune. Didn't work out. Silver mines weren't as deep as people thought." "Do they have a phone?" I asked. Ernst chuckled, revealing a missing tooth. He said, "Hell no, it's a ghost town, and the turnoff is about 5 miles ahead of us." We drove along the road, leaving it for another dirt road that headed deeper into the desert. This part of the desert sloped up into the rugged Ironwood Hills. We were a long ways from civilization. The sun wasn't as high when we finally pulled up to a 2-story house made of thick adobe walls, with a barn of similar construction and a workshop. Some type of large carport housed 2 trucks and a Jeep with room for 1 extra. Based on the oil leaks on the ground, that was probably for Ernst's truck. Several terracotta pots decorated the front entrance, and they held some type of blue flowering plant. I learned later that those were desert bells. The main door was a similar shade of blue, as were the accents around the house. Ernst parked in the shade of the carport, and we set up the ramp to roll my bike to the ground. I parked it in the shade. A middle-aged woman left the 2-story adobe house, wiping her hands on a towel and looking at me. She walked over and said to the old man, "I should have known you'd bring company. You have to stop collecting strays, Dad." Ernst adjusted his baseball cap and stared at her. "If I left this poor boy stranded in this heat, he'd die." She rolled her eyes, but her smile was genuine. "Dad's right. The heat out here is brutal. Nice to meet you, stranger. I'm Camille Montaigne, Ernst's daughter, and my boys are around here somewhere. Dinner will be ready soon." "I'm Brody. Sorry to be a bother, ma'am," I said. "Only a bother if you don't pull your weight. I expect you to help with dishes and cleaning up. I don't like a mess," she said. Ernst knelt next to my bike, fingering the punctured tire. "Whatever it was got you good. You're going to need a new tire." Camille crossed her eyes and scowled at Ernst. "Stop fussing, Dad. It's time to eat. Brody, go back to the well behind the house and clean up a bit. If you see Charlie or Max, tell them to clean up too." I took my saddlebags with my spare clothes out back. This place might be on the other side of a forgotten ghost town, but time hadn't forgotten it. Solar panels, a satellite dish, and 2 energy-producing windmills, plus a hot tub, a sauna, a large stainless steel barbecue, an outdoor fireplace, a fire pit, all surrounded with a tiled patio and protected from the sun with a slatted roof and decorated with dozens of terracotta pots planted with more desert bells. This place was nicer than many hotels back in Vegas. Off to the side was the wash area and well. It wasn't an old-fashioned well, but a building with pipes sunk into the earth, with more going into the house. Next to it were 3 outdoor shower stalls with turquoise privacy curtains, a beige bathtub with turquoise trim, and a couple of sinks all nicely decorated with beige tile and a touch of turquoise. They were protected from the sun by another large, slatted roof. Terracotta pots filled with desert bells adorned every nook, cranny, and flat space. Camille must love those flowers. A stainless steel half-empty water dish sat next to one of the sinks, and an empty food bowl. Ernst must have a dog around here. I topped off the water dish, found a bag of dog food under one of the sinks, and filled the food dish. In seconds, I was behind the privacy curtain and in heaven. An outdoor shower in the middle of the Mojave nowhere? Lucky me. The hot water massaged my tired, aching body and soothed my muscles. The warm desert air dried my body in minutes. I quickly washed my dirty, sweaty clothes and hung them up to dry. Wearing jeans and a white t-shirt and finally clean, I felt human. A man's voice, deep with bitterness, interrupted my thoughts. "I'm betting that's your bike out front. Let me guess, Grandpa picked you up from the road?" A man joined me in the outdoor washroom. The man had been in the sun all his life. A couple years older than me, he had olive skin, wind-blown brown hair made light by the sun, and a slight, scruffy stubble. His rugged green eyes seemed pleasant, but there was something dark and haunted behind them, and exhausted. He looked very familiar and very handsome. Lucky me. "You must be Charlie. I'm Brody," I said, offering my hand. He didn't take it, but said, "Of all the sneaky ways to get to me, using my grandpa, Just so you know, I don't like reporters. The last one left with a broken nose and trespassing charges. So if I were you, I would figure out a way to leave tonight." I tried to give a friendly smile and said, "I didn't use your grandpa for anything except a way to get out of the sun, and it's a good thing I'm not a reporter." "Why are you bothering me?" he said. "I'm trying not to," I said. He took a towel and disappeared behind one of the privacy curtains. The water came on. I was packing my things into my saddlebags when a kid's voice yelled, "You in here, Dad? Grandma wants to know if Brody likes strawberry jam because we're getting low on raspberry, and if you could get one from the pantry, and see if there's another tub of butter. I brought your kit because Grandma says you forgot it again at lunch. You know you can't do that. What if you have a problem?" When the kid saw me, he stopped talking. The kid was the spitting image of the man who had gone into the shower. He carried a small black case that he set by the sink. A large chihuahua with beige fur followed him, and when the dog saw me, it started barking. "Hi," I said, holding my hand near the dog so he could sniff me. The kid held the dog's collar. "Sandy, settle down. Don't worry, she won't bite. Sandy just barks a lot." Tired voice came from the shower. "Brody, this is my son, Max. Do you like strawberries?" "Dad, now you know why I don't want to go to some stupid school in Dead Man's Butte. You needed your medicine and didn't have it. Who'll make sure you take your medicine?" Max said. "I've had a long day, son. Why don't you get cleaned up before your grandma scolds us?" Charlie said. He stepped out of the shower, towel wrapped around his waist, and opened the kit, a diabetes test kit. "Type 1 or type 2, I asked. "Type 2, diagnosed years ago when I was living in California, and no, I currently don't have a pump. Broke the old one when I took a tumble working on a new construction site. New one's on order," he said. "Construction site?" I asked. "Dad is head of his own company, and they build cool houses, even ours," Max said. Charlie looked away, embarrassed, and mumbled, "We're just getting started. It's called Alternate, and we specialize in building eco-friendly houses, like these. We're trying different ways to keep the ecological footprint low, which can be tough considering we live in the Mojave." He gestured to include the house and buildings around. "Solar panels, windmills, and biodegradable materials?" I asked. "My ideas work great as demos, but getting the permits to build full-size versions can be a headache. Most contractors have never worked with some of the materials I use, and I have to walk a lot of inspectors through some of the most basic ideas. It's slow, but they're catching on," he said. Charlie had the kind of physique you'd expect from an athlete. Nice arms, defined pecs, and a waist I've always dreamed of. He must have a gym in one of those buildings. After dressing, we sat down at the outdoor patio for a simple dinner. Cheese and onion enchiladas, fresh corn on the cob, fresh tomato and avocado salsa, and a dense cheesecake with strawberry topping. Topped it off with a local beer, Three Sisters dark ale for me, Charlie, Camille, and Ernst, and root beer for Max. The microbrewery that makes the beer is back in Vegas, 2 hours from here. The conversation was light and fun. Ernst asked, "What are you doing so far away from civilization?" I sighed, momentarily reliving the sadness, and took a long sip of my beer. My dad died a few months ago. It took months to close down his finances, sell his half of the business to his partner, and close down and sell the house. After all the final bills were paid, his lawyer let me know that I had inherited everything that was left, including my father's last wishes. "Which were?" Camille asked. "A set of GPS coordinates. It turns out Dad had a special spot in the desert that he and Mom always went to. He wants his ashes scattered there, with hers," I said. "What's there?" Max asked. "I've never been this far out in the desert, so I have no idea," I said. "Dad, you know the desert. Maybe you can find it," Max asked. Charlie took a bite of the cheesecake and looked at me, a questioning look about him. "You really aren't a reporter." "Dad's a little paranoid. That's why I have to take care of him," Max said. I checked the notes on my phone and wrote down the GPS coordinates, and Charlie looked them over. "I'd guess 12 miles from here. I'll see what I can find." I turned to Ernst and asked, "You still haven't told me what you needed my help with." Charlie scooted his plate over and ripped a napkin into small pieces. "I'm designing a new building, and Grandpa doesn't have the strength to help me." "Dad uses hay bales," Max said. "Hay bales? To make a building? Is that even possible?" I asked. "I mostly use 2-string bales, and they weigh about 100 pounds, sometimes more," Charlie said. Ernst spoke up. "Our house was one of Charlie's first projects. We set the house up with a wooden framework. Then, instead of bricks or boards, we used hay bales as walls, and covered them with plaster for the inside walls and adobe for the outside. It's cheap, a great insulator, fire-resistant, and very sturdy." "I'll show you the main house when we're done eating," Camille said. "Dad's building a second workshop out back," Max said. Charlie took the little pieces of torn napkin and lined them up on the table, making a rough map of a building. What looks good on paper sometimes doesn't translate to real life. The first load of bales arrived this morning, and I've spent all day laying them out in the pattern I want. Half the pattern, anyway. With some help, we could get the rest done tomorrow morning when the others arrive. "You're building a house out of mud and straw. Didn't the big bad wolf blow that one away?" I said. A flicker of a smile crossed Charlie's lips. "We build them better now." After dinner, I helped take the dishes into the house. Tall ceilings and thick walls. It was cool inside, and decorated in beiges and light browns, with splotches of turquoise thrown about. Simple, stylish, cozy. The walls were 1.5 feet thick. The house didn't have pictures or decorations on the walls, but it had freestanding shelves that held anything decorative. In one corner was a small trophy case. In it was a golden bag of popcorn with the words, "Best Actor presented to Charlie Montaigne for his work on Summerland," written on it. A glass obelisk statue was next to it with the words, "Best Up-and-Coming Talent presented to Charlie Montaigne for his work on Last Train to Detroit." And then an odd glass plaque with the words, "Best Kiss Award presented to Charlie Montaigne and Stephanie Larson for their work in Life of the Party." Rumors said they had to edit that scene a lot to keep the movie from having an X rating. After the trophy case was a black plaque with gold words, "Pride Award, Indie Film Festival, presented to Charlie Montaigne for Best Male Performance in an Independent Film." The show was called Redeemed, Charlie Montaigne's last film. A low-budget, yet critically acclaimed story of a gay man's recovery from drug addiction as he struggles to prove himself. He eventually became a cop and found love. Back in high school, it was one of my favorite movies. A magazine carefully shrouded in plastic was on a lower shelf. The caption was, "Could this be the sexiest bisexual alive?" With a shirtless picture of Charlie Montaigne shielding his eyes as he looked off to the sunset. I'd seen all those movies, read that article. No wonder Charlie looked familiar. He was the teenage heartthrob and actor, Charlie Montaigne. My high school secret crush. It didn't matter that I had never met him, and had no chance of ever meeting him. My deepest wish was to trade places with Stephanie Larson for that kiss. Charlie Montaigne was mega rich, mega popular, mega famous. He had everything going for him. The lights, the life, the stars. Rumor had him dating any star or starlet that was popular. Then he disappeared. Some rumors said he secretly went to rehab. Others said he secretly married Stephanie Larson and moved to France. Who'd have thought he'd be living in Nevada? Lucky me. Camille caught me looking at the memorabilia and sadly said, "That was a lifetime ago. Best left in the past." "What happened?" I asked. "It didn't live up to the billing," Charlie said, coming up behind us. I turned to look at him. "Do you want to talk about it?" "Let's just say that the lifestyle disagreed with me," he said. "Do you miss the life?" I asked. Charlie paused a moment before looking at me. I was so high that I only remember hating it. I cleaned up right before Redeemed and got out right after. In the awkwardness, I helped Camille with the dishes. Maybe meeting your heroes is a bad idea. That night, I slept on their patio, staring at the skies. Without any lights to block their brilliance or clouds to mar the perfection, the stars glowed. I'd never seen stars like that. Except for a couple of the brighter ones, there is too many lights in Vegas to see the stars. The stars littered the sky with brilliant points of light, and for the first time in my life, I saw the magnificence of the Milky Way. The desert night was cool, and I snuggled into the blankets Camille had provided, but I couldn't sleep. A shadow moved from the doorway and sat down next to me. It spoke, softly. "Charlie, you asked if I missed that life? Part of me does, and then the rest of me remembers how bad it was. I'm sorry I wasn't nicer before. Reporters make me crazy." I sat up. We were two shadows huddled under the vastness of the stars. Charlie kept speaking. "The stress is more than you'll ever know. Up at 4, and it doesn't stop until midnight. The worst part was how often everything changes. I'd learned my lines for an upcoming scene, only to discover they changed everything 15 minutes earlier and never told me. The directors always look down on me. After all, I'm just an actor and will be gone in a year. I guess they were right." "Doesn't sound fun," I said. "Between the paparazzi and the crazy fans, I didn't want to go outside anymore," Charlie said, and in a quieter voice that was almost a whisper, he added, "It wasn't fun. Once Redeemed was over, I abandoned acting." "What about Max?" I asked. For a moment, Charlie let down the barriers that protected himself from the world, and in a voice that trembled, he said, "My souvenir with Stephanie. I don't know how I feel about her anymore, but Max is my life. I've never loved anyone like him. Stephanie surrendered all parental rights so she could pursue her career. I thought I loved her, but she only used me. I was her boy toy to popularity. She's had dozens since then." "What about your best kiss scene? I bet that was fun," I said. Charlie chuckled before saying, "It was an act. I would have done a better job if they had replaced her with this cute guy working the sets. Did you know we shot 47 takes to get that damn scene right, but the director finally gave up? Stephanie was drunk and kept giggling and ruining the shot. Her breath smelled like a distillery," Charlie said. "She was not fun to kiss." "But the award?" I asked. "It's amazing what they can do in editing," he said. "Truth is disappointing. You don't know how many nights I've fantasized about that kiss," I said. "You mean, as in you and me?" Charlie laughed. "What can I say? I had the biggest crush on you," I said. We sat up, quietly staring into infinity. Sometime later, I laid back thinking about nothing, and Charlie tossed me another blanket. "It gets really cold out here at nights, but I sleep out here anyway. I love the quiet. I love the stars. I love the peace." He lay down beside me, and we talked until we fell asleep. I woke just before dawn. Somebody warm next to me. Lucky me. Somehow, during the night, me and Charlie had scooted next to each other, keeping each other warm. Sandy, their dog, slept on my feet. Never in my wildest dreams had I ever thought I would wake up next to Charlie Montaigne. I snuggled into my blankets to stay warm and thought about my father's last request. Where did I have to go? After a breakfast of ham and eggs and blueberry pancakes, I helped Charlie lay out the hay bales for the new building. About noon, Charlie, Max, Sandy, and I set out in Ernst's old truck, my bike in the back, in search of my dad's GPS coordinates. It turned out it was smack dab in the middle of the ghost town, Morgan's River. Morgan's River was basically one street with a few houses nearby. The still-standing buildings were the old Silver Lode Saloon and the old Morgan's River Bank, a post office, a church, and a couple I couldn't figure out. Across the street from the bank was a building that made me stop. One of my great-great-grandparents must have had some stories to tell. The building was the Ashcombe Mercantile. I wandered into the old building. Whatever had once been on the shelves was gone. Nothing remained but rotting boards and broken windows and sand and dust. And a small plaque on the wall behind where the register must have stood. Jeremiah Ashcombe proudly welcomes you to the Ashcombe Mercantile, home of the finest merchandise in Morgan's River. I took pictures not only of the old store, but of the town. The GPS coordinates led us to an old cabin with a dead tree out front and a sign above the door that read, Ashcombe. The venerable Ashcombe family estate, Charlie said. Your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents must have lived there. After I poured Dad's ashes by the dead tree, Charlie took me to the nearest town, Dead Man's Butte. He dropped me off at a repair shop and he asked, Could you not tell anybody I'm living here? Only if I can come see you again, I said. I had to flirt just a little. My God, this was the Charlie Montaigne. Charlie gave me the smile I had fallen in love with as he and Max and Sandy drove off. As soon as my bike was fixed, I headed back to Vegas. Strangest, longest, weirdest weekend I've ever known. Maybe the best one, too. I called up Grandma on my dad's side and spoke to her. I told her what had happened, and she confirmed. Her grandfather came to Nevada around 1860, looking for silver, and helped settle Morgan's River. He raised a family that lived there until the town died, and then the family moved to Vegas. I did research on Morgan's River and took a chance. I wanted to see Charlie and his family again. I wanted to spend a night under the stars, talking about anything. I wanted to help build their new workshop. I just wanted to spend time with Charlie. And since I had no way of asking, I'd show up. With dinner. Would he mind if I spent the night again? With the steaks tenderizing in a special marinade, I drove my Harley 2 hours to the Desert Bells homestead. Part of me felt a little guilty because this was going to be a total surprise. As a teen, I watched Charlie's movies over and over. I even had copies of every article in the magazines. Meeting him now had been a stroke of luck. Lucky me. It was about 4 p.m. when I pulled up to Desert Bells. The trucks filled the carport, but a stretched black limousine streaked with dust parked behind them. I pulled my bike into the shade at the side of the 2-story house. Voices came from around back. I followed the sound, walking around the beautiful house. Charlie stood in the middle of the patio, his hands on Max's shoulders. Max held Sandy. They faced a man in a suit and a woman with blonde hair pulled into a tail and wearing oversized dark glasses. Charlie had company. I've always had bad timing. Damn, there are disadvantages to not being able to call or text. Ernst and Camille stood to the side, both with a stoic look on their face. Lucky me, Sandy saw me first. She barked, wiggled, and jumped out of Max's arms. The little dog ran straight for me, barking and dancing. "Sandy, get back here," Max yelled, and left his father to run to me. Max needn't have worried. Sandy must have been 5 feet away from me when she leapt. I caught the excited dog and hugged her. Her tongue licked every centimeter of my face. "Settle down, Sandy. It's only been a week," I said, laughing. "Hey, it's Brody, everybody," Max yelled. Ernst broke into a smile and said, "Well, I'll be. Did you get your bike fixed?" "You wouldn't believe what the repairman pulled from my tire, and take one guess what was stuck in the wheel," I said. Ernst walked over, saying, "I bet that cost a bundle." I shook his hand, still holding the dog, and said, "We won't talk about that. Hope I'm not interrupting something important. I brought steaks and they're marinating in the cool on back. You ever tried getting one of those things to stay attached to your bike?" Camille walked over and gave me a hug, also smiling. "Life can be so hard. Why don't you bring them back to the barbecue? What's the special occasion?" Somebody once said, "Honesty is the best policy, so why not give it a shot?" This is a sneaky way to ask Charlie on a date, and pay the rest of you back for helping me last weekend. We'll eat, talk, get a little drunk because I brought 2 6-packs of Three Sisters Dark Ale, and then we can watch the stars. Dad and I stargaze all the time. I'll show you where the Big Dipper is, and we'll follow the handle to Booties, and then to the little Mardi Gras crown. It's called Corona. Dad knows all the stories, Max said. Good thing I brought root beer for you, I said. I sat down to Sandy and picked up Max, walking over to Charlie. What do you say, Charlie? Is it a date? How can I say no? You are always welcome here, Charlie said, and he gave me and Max a quick hug. Whatever cologne he wore smelled good and musky. The woman saw us and stiffened. Forgive me, I didn't know you had company, I said. Brody, this is a friend of Dad's, Max said. The woman seemed about to say something. Ma'am, I'm Brody, I said. Chelsea Duncan, agent for Stephanie Larson. I used to know Charlie back in the day, and it's a pleasure to meet you, she said. But the way she said it, I don't think it was a pleasure. Charlie gave me a chin lift and said, Take everything back to the barbecue. I'll be a minute. Chelsea gave Charlie a faint smile and said, Seeing someone now? Is that your boyfriend? Chelsea, let's cut the small talk. Stephanie signed all of Max's parental rights over to me. I have full custody, Charlie said. I spoke to our lawyer. That will change, and Stephanie is willing to take you to court to do it, Chelsea said. Isn't Max 8? Since Stephanie never bothered to check in on Max before, why now? I asked. You're not involved in any of this, so butt out, she sneered. Charlie took Max from me, giving me a slight smile. He said, Brody is right. Stephanie hasn't visited or even sent a postcard. We could have even arranged a Zoom call, but she never cared. The judge isn't going to like that she signed away her rights and never made any attempt to visit. I think her custody case is DOA, I said. Charlie, Chelsea said, get real. Do you know how far out you live? This is past the middle of nowhere. Do you even know the last time Stephanie was in Nevada? Besides, she didn't abandon her career like some loser I know. I don't know how Charlie stayed calm, but he only rolled his eyes, then said, At least I raised my son and have my own business. Answer Brody's question. Why does Stephanie care now? Chelsea went into full business mode. She didn't so much as talk to us as talk to an imaginary camera. She's working on this new comedy about the trials of a single parent, single mom blues. You know, everything that can go wrong goes wrong, but we make it funny. And we throw in a romance. Clint Harrison, the guy from Dead Beat Dead, is the leading man. Anyway, Stephanie thinks, and I agree, it will go a long way if her doting son is at the premiere with her, his precious mother. It'll appeal to an all-new audience and get sympathy votes. They'll see her as a single mother trying to support her son. Everyone can see that she, a single mother, can empathize with what their little lives are like. New audience demographics equal more exposure, which equals a variety of new film offers, which means even more money. If Stephanie works this right, she could even make a killing in European markets. Everybody knows the French love romance films. Charlie smirked, but anger hid behind his eyes. I took his hand and whispered, Calm down. He glanced at me, at our hands, and said, Stephanie wants to use my son to make herself richer. She wants to use Max. Stephanie doesn't even have the nerve to ask me personally, but sends her agent. I don't want Max in that life. It's just like when Stephanie used you. That's the Hollywood way. Who can you step on to make a name for yourself? I said. The best decision I ever made was leaving. Chelsea, tell Stephanie the answer is no. I'm not letting Max get involved in that life. Further communication about this matter will be through my lawyer, Charlie said. Fine, but this isn't over. Max will be at the premiere, she said. Once she left, we barbecued the steaks. Camille made sweet potato and red bean salad, and we grilled fresh corn on the cob. For dessert, a lemon cake with fresh blueberries. Charlie took me on a tour of the new workshop in progress, and later, that night, we leaned against the wall of the main house, out of sight, and we talked. "Thank you for helping me with Chelsea," he said. Charlie and I stood next to each other, maybe too close, maybe way too close. My heart beat a little faster. He parted his lips. I licked my lips and took a breath. "It's been a long time," he whispered. "Some things you don't forget. Let me remind you," I said, leaning in and lightly kissing him. His lips were unresponsive. Had I made a mistake? Had I misread the moment? His lips quivered, and he softly kissed me back. We grew closer, our kiss gentle and hesitant. We leaned our foreheads together, smiling. "I've been too busy being a dad to think about me," he said. "Maybe tonight, think about you," I whispered, and nibbled my way down his neck and under his ear. He moaned, his eyes closed, and he held his breath. "It's been too long," he said. We were both breathing fast, and we locked eyes. Our kiss was more forceful. His hands were firm on my back as they slid inside my shirt. His breath hot, his need palpable. "How long have you been on your own?" I whispered, but I already guessed the answer. He'd been burned, bad, both by Hollywood and by Stephanie. He'd retreated from the world to remote parts of Nevada, to the other side of a ghost town, and raised his son in peace and started his business. Alone. I was so close to his ear. I whispered, "You don't have to be alone anymore." We separated a few inches. Something about his eyes, they seemed to ache, to bubble with tears, to barely hold back the pain. "I'm here," I whispered, lifting his hand and softly kissing each knuckle. Charlie opened his mouth, about to say something, but his emotion got in the... "Dad, I can't sleep. Can I sleep with you?" a small voice said from the patio. Charlie sighed and whispered, "Romance will have to wait." I began to understand the real reason why Ernst wanted my help. Camille wanted my help too. In a way, Max did as well. Charlie had closed himself off from life. He'd shut down. As weird as it sounded, his family wanted Charlie to meet somebody, to wake up and rejoin the human race. They weren't looking for a future boyfriend or son-in-law. They wanted Charlie to connect with someone, to make a friend. Charlie's pain went deeper than they spoke about. Maybe than they knew about. I could guess. A surprise pregnancy. I bet Charlie was horrified. Stephanie didn't want the kid. Charlie wanted to raise him, even if it cost him his career. Stephanie must have revealed that Charlie was nothing more than a cheap fling, a stepping stone for her own rising star. A public pregnancy could have ruined that. How did they keep it quiet? Charlie had stepped in, taking the child when Stephanie could care less. Charlie sacrificed his dreams and his fame to raise his son. Charlie took Max and never looked back. I think I better take this a little bit slower before I scared Charlie away. I smiled at Charlie and said, "Why don't you and Max show me the Mardi Gras crown and whatever those booties are?" I drove up the next weekend, and the next. I helped Charlie build the new workshop, helped Max with his homework. He attends school in Dead Man's Butte. And somewhere, somehow, I became part of the family. The 5th time I drove up, something had changed. Charlie sat on the patio, staring at a letter, the saddest look on his face. He looked at me, and I wanted to run to him, hug him, tell him it was going to be okay. He held an official, signature-required letter. He let me read the letter. Stephanie had seen a lawyer and had arranged a one-time court-ordered visitation, specifically for a Friday night. One quick search on my phone and it confirmed my suspicions. The world red carpet premiere of Single Mom Blues, and it was in Vegas. How did she arrange this? I asked. I don't want Max to go, but I don't have a choice, Charlie said. Camille stepped to the door, worry creasing her brow. Brody, what do we do? I reread the letter and smirked. Exactly what she wants. Charlie, call your lawyer and make sure they understand that this is a supervised visitation. Daddy's going to a party. Do you mind if I'm the plus one? Friday night, premiere night, and the butterflies in my stomach wouldn't land. I suspect it was worse for Charlie. Our limo stopped at the edge of the red carpet, outside the famous Palace Theater. A lot of people clustered on either side of the red carpet. A doorman opened the limo back door, and I, a nobody, stepped out. I helped Max out, then Charlie. I took Max's left hand, Charlie took his right, and the three of us, all in our black tuxedos, walked past the throng of people. Red carpets are notorious for attracting an army of paparazzi, and they and their cameras took constant pictures of us. A lot of Stephanie Larson fans were shouting and screaming, and we were ushered into an area set aside so reporters could ask questions and photographers could take better pictures than those of the paparazzi. Somebody yelled, "Isn't that Charlie Montaigne?" All these reporters must terrify Charlie, and who knows how Max will take this. Good thing I'm here. Lucky me. I couldn't understand much of what the crowd said because of all the shouting and screaming. Max got scared and I picked him up. Charlie held my hand and led us to a quiet area. A reporter walked over to us. Sarah Coven, with entertainment at your fingertips. Charlie, who are these people with you? What have you been doing for the last 8 years? I'd like you to meet Brody, my boyfriend, and my son, Max, Charlie said. And to answer your question, I've been taking care of mine and Stephanie's son. Tonight, Max can finally meet his mother. I kept a straight face, but inside I was laughing. Charlie said the lines exactly as we had rehearsed. Stephanie has a son? The reporter asked. She says Nevada is too far away from Hollywood to visit, I said. Stephanie gave up custody right after Max was born, so she could pursue her career, Charlie said. Interesting. And what have you been doing? The reporter asked. Raising my boy and starting my company. I build eco-friendly houses. Come on by and I'll give you a tour, Charlie said. I leaned in and said, my boyfriend is not play acting some movie. Charlie is a single father and makes it work. He gave up his acting career to make sure his son had a good life. Meanwhile, his ex-lover, I began. Let's not go there on camera, Charlie said. The rest of the interview was about Charlie's business. That is, until the reporter asked, Brody, if you and Charlie get married, will you adopt Max? That took me by surprise, and Charlie's jaw hung open. I said the first thing that came into my mind. He'll be our best man, but the rest is up to Max. Max hugged me tight and said, You make Daddy happy. Don't you ever go. I comforted Max as Charlie said, I guess you have your answer. We were at the end of the red carpet, casually chatting with other stars and reporters, when a silver Mercedes pulled up. The doorman opened the door. A man got out, wearing black leather pants, a silvery jacket, and an untucked silk shirt that looked like an old Japanese painting. He waved to the crowd, and the crowd screamed. Who's the guy who doesn't have fashion sense? I whispered. Clint Harrison, Stephanie's current beau, and Japanese prints are chic, a reporter whispered. Clint helped the next person out. I didn't need to be told who that was. Stephanie Larson, in a long-sleeved, full-length, skin-tight red sequin dress with a plunging back. Her lips were bright red, her eyeshadow a deep green, and her nails crimson daggers. She wore red stiletto heels the same color as her nails. She carried a half-full champagne glass and used it to salute the crowd. The crowd screamed even louder. Max plugged his ears. Stephanie pressed her overly done lips on Clint's cheek, leaving a pair of bright red lips. Charlie leaned in very close and almost had to shout, "No, I don't miss the life." Stephanie and Clint worked the crowd and spent a few minutes with the reporters. The reporter, Sarah Coven, that had spoken to us, asked Stephanie, "Will your son follow in your footsteps and become an actor?" Charlie's hand tightened around mine. Stephanie's eyes widened a little. She looked around and spotted us. I picked up Max. Charlie placed an arm about my waist. Several reporters snapped pictures of us. For a second, the crowd became quiet, and suddenly it seemed like every microphone in a 15-foot radius was aimed at us. Stephanie and Clint walked towards us, her smile fake. She said, "Charlie, my old flame, how nice of you to come, and you brought my darling son. Come and give your mother a hug." Charlie whispered, "Photo op." Max looked at me and held me so tight I thought he would strangle me. Then he looked at Charlie and said, "Who is the scary lady?" "Max, remember how I told you your mother was too busy being a movie star to visit us? Tonight we get to see her new movie. This is your mom," Charlie said. Max didn't speak for a moment, and when he did, he said, "Can we go back to Morgan's River? We never went inside the saloon, and I want to see if they really have those funny swinging doors. Maybe Mom could come, but she might get scared." "Why's that, honey?" Stephanie said, looking at all the people looking at her. "It's a ghost town, but we didn't see any ghosts. Maybe they only come out at night, and we saw an old store that Brody's grandfather owned, and they have an old bank. It's really cool. Grandma told me that I need a 2-hour bath to get clean afterwards because I got so dirty." Stephanie tried to take Max from me, but Max wouldn't let go. We had the photo shoot, me holding Max, standing next to Charlie, who stood next to Stephanie, who stood next to an uncomfortable-looking Clint. Stephanie was too busy to speak with us again. However, several reporters spent some time with us, especially a guy from the website, LGBTQ Times. It was great advertising for Charlie's business. For what it's worth, Max didn't like the movie. Neither did Charlie. Neither did I. What we did like? We went back to Morgan's River the next day and helped Max make a special video presentation for his class. I went to Desert Bells every weekend until I finally moved in. It took about a year, but Charlie and I converted the new workshop into a house, our house, and we were married on the beautiful patio of the Desert Bells homestead. That day we became Charlie and Brody Montaigne. Not long after Charlie and I were married, Max gave me his wedding present. The adoption was approved. Let's just say that he calls me Dad now. Lucky me. The end. Thank you everybody for joining me. I'm Gio, and I hope you have a great day. Oh, little side note. My old microphone fell off my desk and broke, so this is the new microphone. I'm still trying to figure out the settings for it. So, be patient with me. Anyway, peace.